Yeah, just like a regular. Yeah, that's fine. And just keep the same shot.
Well, I may change it in
But
the.
you can control it a little bit.
No, no. I will have to run back there.
Okay, I mean,
So you see how dark it is?
mhm.
I was waiting for them to turn the lights on because I can set it up for how it is you can. But then when everybody comes, they'll turn on the lights.
It's funny. CTV, they had me get a camera out. I said, what is that job? I did one, so I said, yeah, I know what to do here. So how did you do the first football game you got?
It's not. It's next Saturday.
So she think you got it. You think you, because I can do it if you.
The problem is I can't pay you. I can only pay students.
That's all right. I can get experience though. Let's see how I do because I'm trying to, be part of it. I like to help. It sounds weird, but I just had to say because check me out. You know how you people. All right, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it as is.
So again, if you just block that area so nobody kind of gets in front, because I may have to run in front and
Okay,
set
I
it
got
out.
you. I'm gonna do that.
Students, please move quickly to the front to your seats as we continue to prepare for our procession. Please move quickly to the front to your seats. We ask that you would silence your cell phones and mobile devices as we continue in preparation for our procession. Again, students, move quickly to the front to your seats. Please stand as we prepare to receive the procession of our faculty, our administrators, our vice presidents, the president's cabinet, President David Wilson, and our sesquicentennial Chief University Marshal, Dr. Milford Jeremiah.
Good morning. You may be seated. Thank you, Dr. Springer, our university organist, for the musical prelude, and thank you, Dr. Clayton Salisbury, our Chief Faculty Marshal Emeritus, Dr. Milford Jeremiah, our Chief Faculty Marshal, and Dr. Bernie J. Hollis, our sesquicentennial marshal, for leading us in this processional. Mr. President, members of the Board of Regents, distinguished guests, my colleagues on the dais, members of the faculty, administration, and staff, and students of Morgan State University, especially the class of 2017. Good morning again, and welcome to the 2017 Matriculation Convocation at Morgan State University. We are very pleased to have you here this morning as we mark the official beginning of the 2017-18 academic year and continue our celebration of Morgan's 150th anniversary, our sesquicentennial celebration. This is going to be a very exciting year at Morgan as we take yet another step in our remarkable journey towards growing the future and leading the world. Let me begin with just a few reminders, especially for our students. And I just heard someone go, shh. So right on time. First, let me remind you that on Thursdays from 11 to 1, we observe University Hour at Morgan. There are no classes scheduled during this 2-hour time period. This gives us an opportunity to set aside time for this and other important convocations which freshmen and sophomores are required to attend. Since there are no classes during this time period, we require that you remain for the duration of this convocation and that you not leave the concert hall until the convocation has ended and the recessional has left the arena. Second, according to good academic protocol, we ask that during the convocation you stand for the processional at the beginning of the ceremony and the recessional at the end. We also ask that you stand for the invocation and benediction and for the singing of our alma mater. For those portions of the program, the gentlemen in the audience should remove their hats and other headgear. And finally, and most importantly, we ask that you turn off your cell phones and other electronic devices, turn them off right now, or put them on silent, and that you not use those devices, including texting during the convocation. I think you can do it, so let's just turn those devices off right now. We appreciate your full cooperation with these rules of good academic protocol. Before we begin, I want to give special recognition to several members of our Board of Regents who have joined us this morning. Reverend Dr. Frances Murphy Draper, Vice Chair of the Board of Regents. Please stand. And we have with us our Student Regent, Hamida Fahumaditimi. Please stand. We're so happy to have both of you here. We shall begin our program this morning with invocation by Reverend Dr. Bernard Keel, Dean of Morgan State University Memorial Chapel, followed by greetings from Reverend Dr. Frances Murphy Draper, Vice Chair of the Morgan State University Board of Regents. Reverend Keel.
Mr. President. Let us pray. This is a day of new beginning. Seeds planted in nurturing fertile ground have reaped a harvest. The beginning of those in the class of 2021 and the graduating of those in the class of 2017. We gather together to ask blessings, building upon the sesquicentennial legacy of those who dare to declare their commitment to freedom, to academic, personal, and spiritual formation. Illumine the path forward for our beloved university. 150 years later, we are still marching to the cadence of purpose, progress, and promise. Together, we continue to grow the future, for our time under God is indeed now. Instruct and prepare us, divine, to rise to the challenges of all things for every hour of the journey that lies ahead. Let us behave sincerely and reasonably in our efforts to embrace the strangers and welcome the others. May we not cause confusion and sorrow to any in the diaspora of humankind. Grant that Morgan State University will be a lively center for sound learning, new discovery, and the pursuit of wisdom. That those who teach and those who learn may find you to be the source of all truth. And when this chapter of our lives concludes, let us triumphantly echo the words of John Wesley, I did all I could, for the most I could, for as long as I ever could, in the name of the one who creates, the one who sustains, and the one who redeems. Amen.
Good morning, President Wilson, distinguished members of the faculty, staff, students, alumni, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of our board chair, the Honorable Kwesi Mfume, your student regent who's already been introduced, and other members of the Board of Regents, welcome. As many, if not all of you know, this is a very special year for our university, a year of celebrating our purpose, our promise, and our progress. And what progress we have made. When I was growing up, my grandfather, Carl Murphy, faithfully walked his Baltimore-based grandchildren across Morgan's campus at least 3 times a year, as he patiently pointed out the progress that was being made on campus, urging us to consider Morgan when it was time for us to go to college. Although he was a graduate of both Howard and Harvard, I only remember him talking about Morgan. His value proposition, Dr. Wilson, Morgan is an excellent place to get a quality education, period. At least 10 of us heeded his advice, and he would be so proud to know that 50 years after his death, Morgan is the state's premier urban doctoral research university and is the only university in the country whose entire campus has been designated a national treasure by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. He would be proud to know that Morgan is the only HBCU that currently has a billboard running in Times Square, as well as a big ad board behind home plate at Camden Yards. From its modest beginning of only 9 students to nearly 8,000 students from all over the world, Morgan has awarded more than 50,000 diplomas since opening its doors 150 years ago. Now let me ask a question. How many alumni are in the auditorium? Just slip your hands. How many Morgan alums? How many future alumni? So will you please stand with me, alumni and future alumni, as we applaud President David Wilson and his team, and especially our world-class faculty and staff, for their tireless efforts to provide every student with the necessary tools to compete in this ever-changing global society. May God bless you and keep you in His care as together we strive to grow the future and lead the world. Welcome to Morgan.
Thank you very much. As I mentioned earlier, Morgan is in the midst of the celebration of its 150th anniversary. As part of this celebration, the university commissioned one of our faculty members to write a special composition celebrating the 150th year of the founding of this institution. That faculty member is Dr. James Lee III, Professor of Composition and Theory in the Department of Fine and Performing Arts. As a composer, Professor Lee has had his works performed by many professional orchestras, including the Baltimore Symphony, the National Symphony, the Philharmonic Orchestra, the Detroit Symphony, Atlantic Symphony, Indianapolis Symphony, and many, many others. In addition to his national reputation, he has earned international prestige and garnered an international profile. His works have premiered and been performed in concert halls in Brazil, Argentina, Peru, South Africa, Russia, and Sweden. The work that Dr. Lee has composed for our sesquicentennial celebration is titled Ascents and Flourishes. It begins with an ascending figure of an emphatic manner of various flourishing gestures. Once the music arrives in the middle section, B, it is more reflective, and it includes solos among the ensemble that grow into a descending figure that serves eventually to propel the music to the return of the material in section A. It's just a little bit about it so you can listen as you understand the meaning of the music. Now I would like for the composer, our distinguished professor, Dr. James Lee III, to stand so that we might acknowledge him. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to present the brass quintet consisting of Humberto Enriquez, trumpet 1, Colin Waller, trumpet 2, Nathaniel Wilson, French horn, Milton Andana, trombone, and Dwayne Hurd, tuba, in the premiere of Dr. James Lee III's Ascents and Flourishes, our sesquicentennial fanfare. Let's give him a hand. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for such a magnificent, befitting our sesquicentennial. Thank you. And thank you to our faculty and student musicians who performed it so very beautifully. Now we will have a musical selection by the internationally acclaimed Morgan State University Choir under the direction of Dr. Eric Conway.
Good morning. We will sing Randall Thompson's The Best of Rooms. Literally, the text says, if you're going to allow Christ into your home, you must give him the best of rooms. Hey, the master bedroom. But metaphorically, it's stating, if you're going to allow Christ into your life, you must give him what? The very best. Randall Thompson's The Best of Rooms.
Thank you, Dr. Conway and members of the Morgan State University Choir. There's not a better choir in the world. Let's give them another hand. For those of us who have watched and witnessed American higher education for the past 20 years or so, and for those of us who have been at Morgan for the past 7 years, our convocation speaker this morning needs no introduction. He is a great American educator who has a long and remarkable record of accomplishments and well over 30 years of experience in higher ed administration and leadership. He earned a BS in political science and an MS in education from Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama, a Master of Education degree in educational planning and administration from Harvard University, a doctorate in education in administration, planning, and social policy, also from Harvard University. He has held a number of important posts in higher education, including Vice President for University Outreach and Associate Provost at Auburn University in Alabama, Associate Provost at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin Colleges and the University of Wisconsin Extension, which was his immediate position prior to coming to Morgan. He has authored 2 books and more than 20 articles in scholarly journals and has received many honors for his scholarship and administrative leadership, including being named as one of the nation's top 100 leaders in higher education by the American Association of Higher Education. Since coming to Morgan on July 1, 2010, our speaker has established an extraordinary record of success, including record enrollments, receipt of the university's largest research contract, the launch of a major initiative to improve customer service, continual improvement of technology infrastructure on campus, introduction of Morgan's first online degree programs, significant expansion of study abroad opportunities for Morgan students, and an increase of international students at Morgan, and new construction on campus valued at over $234 million. Yes, let's give that a hand. What is most remarkable about our convocation speaker is not just his outstanding record of achievement, but also the character that he has brought to the presidency of the institution. A character shaped by the intangibles of his background. He grew up with 10 siblings on a sharecropper farm outside of the small town of McKinley, Alabama, and through hard work, tenacity, and encouragement of his father and his teachers, he became the first person in his family to attend and graduate from college. Ever reminded of his humble beginnings and the aid given to him along the way, he is a president who has an unwavering devotion to student success and student welfare, and he is strongly committed to openness, transparency, and fairness that lets all of our students know from the beginning that at Morgan, their lives matter. He comes to you this morning as one who considers his work at Morgan not a job, but his calling. Ladies and gentlemen, and members of the freshman class, please join me in welcoming Morgan's 10th inaugurated president, Dr. David Wilson to deliver the Matriculation Convocation address. Let us welcome him.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Provost Gibson, for those kind words of introduction. I do want to set the record straight. There was far too many uses of the pronoun he. So during my 7+ years here at Morgan, all the things that you have heard her say is the result of a tremendous team that is behind me and in front of me. And so let me just take this opportunity to thank the team that we have assembled here at Morgan to enable us to do all the things that we have done. I do want to once again express my great appreciation to Professor Lee. Terrific composition. Thank you very much for what you're doing here on the faculty to inspire and encourage and create. And also to Dr. Conway and the magnificent 135+ member choir, always, for enabling us to understand what excellence is like in the performing arts. He did not say this, but the choir has been invited to perform at the homegoing celebration of the late Dick Gregory on September the 16th. And we are very delighted that the family asked us to do that. To the Vice Chair of our board, Regent Draper, to our student Regent Famuti Timi, to our distinguished colleagues on the faculty, administration, and staff, to the alumni of the institution, to ladies and gentlemen of the student body, friends of Morgan State University, and most of all, the freshman class of 2017, I thank you for joining us this morning at our annual Matriculation Convocation. We are gathered here today during one of Morgan's finest hours. We are gathered here during a time of great celebration and jubilation as we commemorate the founding of Morgan as the Centenary Biblical Institute in 1867, and as we mark, as you have heard before me, the 150th anniversary of this great institution. And so let me begin by reminding those students who are joining us this year for the very first time that you are members of Morgan's sesquicentennial freshman class. You are the 150th class of freshmen to matriculate at this institution. And so we extend to you this morning an especially warm and sincere welcome to the Morgan family as we extend that as well to the new faculty and staff who are joining us for the very first time. Now, as our 150th sesquicentennial freshman class, you occupy a very important place in the history and in the heart of this university. As you walk this campus each day, I want you to know that you are experiencing 150 years of vision, 150 years of dedication, 150 years of fight, 150 years of diligence and sacrifice. I want you to know that you are experiencing 150 years of perseverance by persons known and unknown to you who have made this national treasure, Morgan State University, possible. That's what I want you to know. And I hope that you are poised to take full advantage of this invaluable opportunity that is being offered to you to attend one of this nation's most premier institutions of higher learning, made possible by those who have come before you and those who have come before me and those who have come before us. The Matriculation Convocation at Morgan is a time-honored ceremony where the president of the university addresses the freshman class and the Morgan community as a way of officially kicking off the academic year. And so this morning, I want to use the convocation to acquaint you with Morgan's 150-year history. And then I want to invite you to assume your role in becoming a part of this great legacy. And so my topic is Morgan's sesquicentennial legacy is now yours. What will you do with it? The first part of my remarks will focus on what you heard from Dean Keels. The 3 Ps: purpose, progress, and promise, as I retrace a little bit of the remarkable journey of this institution over 150 years. And then the latter part of my remarks will focus on 3 Rs: remember, reflect, and rehearse. And so let me focus on the first P, purpose, because that is the foundation upon which this institution was founded. And in fact, our strong sense of purpose has determined and defined our progress and our promise throughout our history. You know, as I was growing up in rural Alabama, the youngest of 10 children, my family and my father in particular would always tell us that if you did not know where you wanted to go, then any road you take would get you to a destination. Well, our ancestors here at Morgan knew what they wanted to do. They knew where they wanted to go, and they knew which road they needed to travel to get them there. In essence, they knew their purpose. There was no confusion. And so our purpose grew out of the circumstances and the background in which our founding took place. And it is important, as I go down this historical track, to view this institution today, not just how it exists today, but how it came into existence to enable it to be viewed today the way that it is viewed. And so I want you to go with me for a moment. I want you to go with me back in time. I want you to stretch your minds and go back to the middle 19th century. Yes, I want you to go with me back to the 1850s. I want you to go with me back to a period during which Morgan was founded. And this period, it was a shameful and a turbulent time when this nation was painfully divided over slavery and over human rights. It was a period, as we go back to that particular time, when the lofty democratic principles on which our government and society were based were put to the ultimate test to decide whether or not this nation, as it had announced in its Declaration of Independence, truly believed in those truths to be self-evident. It was a time for the ultimate test of whether this nation was truly committed to the proposition and to the essential democratic principle that, quote, all men and women are created equal and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The same test then, surprisingly, that confronts us today. Yes, during those turbulent times of slavery, our ancestors tried everything they could to escape the cruelty of those circumstances. Many of them ran away. But then in 1850, a very cruel act was passed that made it legal for slaves who had run away from plantations because they simply wanted to be free to be hunted like animals. That was the controversial Fugitive Slave Act. It was enacted in 1850 by Congress, and it was supported by then-President Millard Fillmore. And the purpose was to stem the tide of runaway fugitive slaves fleeing the southern slaveholding states, including Maryland, and taking refuge and residence in the northern states and in Canada. You see, prior to 1850, if fugitive slaves were fortunate enough to get north of something called the Mason-Dixon line, which was the geographical dividing line between America's free and slaveholding states, these freed slaves could then live free and could start their lives anew. But after 1850, in this Fugitive Slave Act, this Mason-Dixon line was essentially nullified and it was erased, and slaves could, from that point forward, be hunted anywhere in the country. And if they were caught anywhere south of Canada, they could be recaptured and returned to their owners, who would impose the most brutal punishments for their transgressions. And so this act, which amounted to me to little more than bounty hunting, provided financial incentives of the so-called fugitives, whose only crime, once again, was their yearning to be free. That is a part of the context that gave rise to the founding of Morgan. Because this Fugitive Slave Act was based on the faulty premise that slavery was a fact of life that reflected the so-called natural order of things, and that it was rooted, this act, in this sick belief that the right to hold slaves in bondage was not only safeguarded by the Constitution, but Dean Kills was also sanctioned by God himself. And so, ladies and gentlemen, this was one of the darkest hours in the history of this country. It was evil of the highest order. And so it was out of this unspeakable cruelty of the Fugitive Slave Act and the abolitionist movement and the resulting Civil War that the quest for freedom, the quest for equality, the quest for educational opportunity for slaves and former slaves was born. And so, around 1864, along came the Methodist Episcopal Church. And during that year, the General Conference of that church approved the establishment of separate, semi-independent conferences for its African American members, and then that General Conference encouraged those conferences to set as a top priority the establishment of academies or seminaries to train ministers for their churches. And so in that same year, the All African American Washington Conference of the Methodist Church, which was situated primarily at the Sharp Street Church here in Baltimore, was established, and it was encouraged by the General Council to begin to discuss this idea of founding an academy, an institute, to train freed men and former slaves for the ministry in the church. And so the names of 5 of those leaders that came together to start that discussion are recorded in church histories, and those 5 were destined to become the visionary founders of what was to become the Centenary Biblical Institute and later Morgan State University. And so Morgan had its own version of the Fab Five, but they were not basketball players. And amongst our Fab Five were the Reverend Benjamin Brown from Queen Anne's County, who was then pastor of Sharp Street Methodist Church, Reverend Elijah Grissom, who was born into slavery in Centreville, Maryland, and joined Sharp Street Church in 1827, Reverend James Harper, who was born into slavery in Frederick County, and also later served as pastor at Sharp Street, Reverend James Peck, who was born into slavery in Talbot County, Maryland, and later pastored at Sharp Street. And then Reverend Samuel Green Sr., who was a founding member of that Washington Conference. And so I want to take a couple of minutes and delve a little bit more into the personal history of Reverend Samuel Green Sr., because his history was impacted directly by this Fugitive Slave Act. Because of his experiences, Samuel Green Sr. had advocated very strongly for the education of former slaves and freedmen. And it was not philosophical to him, it was very personal. You see, Samuel Green's story is both symbol and substance of the visionary founders and the founding purpose of this institution. It is a compelling story that captures the courage and the determination of our ancestors in speaking truth to power and becoming pioneers in African American higher education. Samuel Green was born a slave in Dorchester County, Maryland. He educated himself, and he eventually purchased his freedom in 1833, at which time he became an aspiring preacher and a teacher of the gospel. He adamantly opposed slavery and has successfully assisted his son in fleeing to Canada in open defiance of that Fugitive Slave Act. But in 1857, Samuel Green was arrested, and he was accused of aiding the escape of his son and of other fugitive slaves. And he was brought to trial, and he was promptly sentenced to 10 years in prison. What was his crime, you ask? It was, quote, knowingly having in his possession a pamphlet called Uncle Tom's Cabin, a book. And so, students in particular, I want you to consider the gravity, the significance, and the symbolism of this event. Samuel Green, a free and educated man, was punished for being in possession of a book. It was a book that was being read at the time by thousands of readers throughout the nation. But in his hands, it was deemed to be a dangerous instrument of outright revolt. In other words, the idea of education, the idea of the ability to read and to write for, quote unquote, the colored population, was considered dangerous and criminal. But fortunately, Samuel Green's story does not end there. He did indeed spend 5 years, from 1857 until 1862, right here in Baltimore in penitentiary. However, when he was released from jail, it was on the condition that he would leave the state of Maryland immediately. And that he did at the end of the Civil War. And then he returned, and he began his strong affiliation with Sharp Street Methodist Church and his unyielding advocacy for the education of blacks. You see, there was something that sentencing judge and Samuel Green's detractors did not comprehend and did not anticipate. There was something they didn't know about him. They did not realize how great a fire was burning within his soul. They didn't realize how great a fire was burning in his heart and in his mind to fight for freedom, to fight for justice, and to fight for equality. They underestimated his fighting spirit and his determination to fight, even to risk his own life for what was right. They did not understand his purpose. So their incarceration of him only fired up his determination and his strong sense of purpose, and both enabled and empowered him to become a fertile seed that was later to bear abundant fruit. Samuel Green realized the truth of a bit of 19th century wisdom that advised us that, quote, education makes a people easy to lead, but difficult to drive, easy to govern, but impossible to enslave. And he was committed to lighting that flame that would move his people up from slavery and forever beyond enslavement. And so, upon his return to Maryland, Reverend Green joined with his fellow pastors in that Washington conference, and he laid the groundwork for what is today Morgan State University. You owe Samuel Green a round of applause. Now, it is extremely important for you to understand that Morgan's commitment then to fighting for justice, to fighting for equality, to fighting for opportunity and for fairness must be as strong today as it was 150 years ago. Matter of fact, it must be stronger. That's why, as your president, I stand here today and I say to you very elementally, that's why you can't stand on the sideline when you see injustice. That's why you can't stand on the sideline when you see intolerance. That's why you can't stand on the sideline when you see bigotry and hatred unfolding around us, because to do so is to dishonor our legacy. And so, please understand that. This is not the time to stand on the sideline. This institution was established out of fight and perseverance and standing up for what is right. And so now let me move on to the second P as we celebrate progress. Yes, Morgan began as a Seminary Biblical Institute in 1867 with simply a series of lectures in the basement of Sharp Street Methodist Church by 2 ministers to 9 male students who were studying for the ministry. Progress. Now, since that time, it has enjoyed a remarkable journey of study progress, study growth, and development that has brought us to this year. Less than 10 years after our founding in 1867, the first thing this institution did was it opened its doors to female students. And then it expanded the curriculum to include training for teachers, offering diplomas, etc. And then in 1890, it was renamed Morgan College in honor of Littleton F. Morgan, who was a former chair of the Board of Trustees who had donated generously to the Institute. And then it was awarded its first degree. Morgan awarded its first degree to George McMecken Hall, in 1895. And by then, we also established 2 branch campuses, one as Princess Anne Academy on the Eastern Shore of Maryland, the forerunner of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And then we opened another campus in Lynchburg, Virginia, as the Virginia Collegiate and Industrial Institute. In essence, Morgan was not playing. It was not standing still. It didn't see his work at the corner of Edmondson Street. It saw it all over the state or all over the region where it was needed. And so that progress continued. In 1975, we was granted university status and then authorized to offer the doctoral degree. And then this past year, as you heard from Regent Draper, we were designated by the state legislature, a bill signed by the governor, as, quote, Maryland's preeminent public urban research university. That is the first time in 150 years that the state of Maryland has recognized this institution as a doctoral research university. And 2 years ago, our entire campus was declared a national treasure, as you've heard as well, by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. We are not standing still. And so today, what began as a freshman class of 9 students has blossomed into a student population of nearly 8,000 students from 40 states, 70 countries. A faculty of 2 has blossomed into a full-time faculty of nearly 400. What was a single curriculum in ministry has grown into a program inventory of nearly 50 degrees at the bachelor's level, 9 certificates post-baccalaureate, 34 master's degree programs, 16 doctoral programs. And as the Institute dreamed of by our visionary leaders, after 150 years of progress, now ranks among the top 100 producers of minority degrees in the United States of America. That's progress. But along the way, the most salient aspect of progress at Morgan has always been our commitment to the progress of our students. It has always been a nurturing environment that offers support, encouragement, and assistance to ensure student success and to make sure that our students are always moving forward toward their goals. This institution has always encouraged students to have the strong same sense of purpose that was responsible for its founding and has challenged students as we challenge you today in an unapologetic way to reach for the stars. And after experiencing the magic that is Morgan along the way, thousands of alums have grabbed those stars, starting with George McMecken, as I indicated, the first graduate of Morgan College, class of 1895. But he was also a partner in the firm of Hawkins and McMecken, one of the first civil rights attorneys in Maryland and the first to challenge residential segregation in the city of Baltimore. Verta Welcome, after whom the Welcome Bridge is named, class of 1939, she grabbed the star. She was the first African-American female state senator in the United States, and she spearheaded the legislation that elevated this institution from college status to university status. Then there's Victorine Adams, class of 1940, who was the first African-American female elected to the Baltimore City Council. Dr. Rebecca Carroll, class of 1942, who was the first African-American to receive a doctorate from the University of Maryland, College Park. Harry A. Cole, class of 1943, who was the first African-American elected to the Maryland State Senate and the first African-American to serve on the Maryland State Court of Appeals, the state's highest court. There's Joe Black, class of 1950, who was the first African-American and the first African-American pitcher to win a game in the World Series in baseball. There's Dr. Freddie Hill Lucas, class of 1956, who was the first Morgan graduate to win the prestigious Fulbright Scholarship and set this institution on a course where today we have over 140 students here at Morgan who won the Fulbright. That is #1 amongst all HBCUs in the country and one of the leaders amongst higher education. Just a couple more. There's Perrin Mitchell, class of 1950, who was the first African American to win election to Congress from the state of Maryland. There's Richard Dixon, class of 1960, the first African American appointed as state treasurer in Maryland. There's W. Wilson Good, class of 1961, who was the first African American elected mayor of Philadelphia. There's Robert M. Bell, class of 1966. He grabbed the star too. He was the first African American appointed Chief Justice of the Court of Appeals, the highest court in Maryland, and he also headed the state's judicial system. And then, just to round out my examples, there's Terry Edmonds, who became the first, and the last time I looked, only African American to be the chief speech writer for a sitting United States president. He was the speech writer for President Bill Clinton. And then we have Catherine Pugh, class of 1973, who is the first Morgan graduate to be elected mayor of the city of Baltimore. And so Morgan has been at the forefront of advancements for African Americans during its entire 150-year period. It played a special role in the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. And there's a reason, students in Morgan community, that we have that exhibit in the student center on the first floor. You need to spend a lot of time there. You need to spend a lot of time not just passing by it as if it is a picture on the wall. You need to spend some time understanding that history, because what that shows is that those students who came to this institution in the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, they led the first college sit-in movement in America. The history books will have us believe that that happened in Greensboro, North Carolina, with the 4 students who refused to move from the lunch counter. That's not true. It happened right here across the street in the Northwood Shopping Plaza at Morgan State University. And so, let me just say that since our founding in 1867, Morgan educators, Morgan students, Morgan alumni have been on the cutting edge of change and the cutting edge of progress, and it all began once again with our Fab Five, our visionary founders. But now it falls upon us. It falls on you. It falls on this generation to continue that great work. Now, this brings me to my last P, promise. Promise. So I talked about purpose. I talked about promise and progress. And so Morgan made a promise 150 years ago, and it promised that it would promote the moral and intellectual elevation of the community. And for 150 years, we think we've kept that promise. We have established this university as one of the most important and productive institutions of higher education in this city, in this state, in this nation, and we have advanced onto the world stage as an educational leader and a cultural ambassador. Now it falls squarely on your shoulders to keep this promise that the visionary founders of Morgan made to future generations and to preserve this institution's great tradition and our legacy. The time is indeed now. The time is always now. But the time is now for you to make your contribution to that legacy and to keep it alive, to keep it well, and to keep it thriving. I have reminded previous freshman classes that the best way to fit into this Morgan legacy of excellence that I'm talking about is to simply do 3 things as I close. The first is that you must remember forgetfulness can be a dangerous thing. I want you to remember the struggle for social justice and educational opportunity so nobly begun by the visionary founders of this institution. I want you to remember their vision. I want you to remember the dangers that they confronted. I want you to remember the struggles that they undertook. I want you to remember their audacity to hope and to work for a brighter future for you and succeeding generations. I want you to remember the past, lest you find yourselves repeating it. And the second thing that I want you to do is to spend some time reflecting. I want you to reflect on the lessons of the past. I want you to consider the broad shoulders on which you stand. I want you to put your present situation, whatever that situation is, in the broader context of what has come before you, realizing fully where you stand in the stream of history and in that struggle. And I want you to get in touch with your inner selves, and I want you to begin the all-important process of setting forth your purpose. And then the last thing I want you to do is to spend some time rehearsing and preparing in a very deliberate, conscientious way for the role that you must play, not can, that you must play in your future and in the future contributions that you will make to your communities, to your state, to the nation, and to the world in order for the Morgan legacy to move forward for the next 150 years. At this point in your life, I think you absolutely must have both roots and wings. You must be well grounded, and you must be in a position to fly wherever you are needed. I want you to recall our humble but noble past. I want you to learn from the experiences of our ancestors. I want you to remember what they stood for. I want you to stand up against bigotry. I want you to be a strong advocate for justice. I want you to fight against hate. I want you to fight against racism. I want you to fight against homophobia. I want you to advocate for the dreamers. I want you to be true to the Morgan legacy. And then I want you to reflect on what is most meaningful to you and determine the type of world that you want to bring into being. I want you to reflect on and become committed to the declaration made some years ago in memory of a great American, that some men see things as they are and ask why, but I dream things that never were and ask why not. In your reflection, I want you to have the audacity to dream and to hope, to dream things that never were and ask why. And finally, I want you to think of your years here at Morgan as a quintessential rehearsal to become all that you can be and to make what will be your alma mater proud. And so I ask that in order to be the promise that is called for and foreshadowed by our sesquicentennial theme, that you come to us with the same sense of purpose that guided our founders, and that you come to us with that same sense of commitment to progress that has been the hallmark of this institution for a century and a half. I have just given you this morning a brief glimpse of what we are highlighting this year during our sesquicentennial celebration: our purpose, our progress, and our promise. We are elated to have you join us in this celebration and to take your rightful place in Morgan's legacy. But you always remember that Morgan's sesquicentennial legacy, as we move toward the end of December, is yours. And so, sesquicentennial freshman class of 2017, Make no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it. You have arrived at the right place at the right time. Your time is now. And you must firmly grasp the opportunity that enrollment here at Morgan has afforded you. Let your battle cry be carpe diem. Seize the day, onward and upward. You are the generation that we promised to the world 150 years ago, and you will determine whether we will make good on that promise. Have a great academic school year. Thank you very much.
That was an awesome speech by our president. Let us show acknowledgement one more time. Thank you, President Wilson. We will now have another selection by the Morgan State University Choir under the direction of Dr. Eric Conway.
If you don't mind, and we're going to do some marching up in here. In fact, we're going to march to Zion by Raymond Wise.
We are marching, 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 we're marching to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion, we're marching to Zion, that beautiful city of God, we're marching to Zion. Beautiful Zion, we're marching to Zion, that beautiful city of God. We're marching to Zion, march, beautiful Zion, go. We're marching to Zion, march to Zion, to Zion, Zion, to Zion, Zion, and to marching on Zion land. Come on and go, come on and go. Come on and don't you wanna go, 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 come go with us to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion, come go with us to Zion, that beautiful city of God, come go with us to Zion, beautiful, beautiful Zion, come go with us to Zion, that beautiful city of God.
Yes, we are marching. Thank you. Let's give them another hand. Woo. That's awesome. I'm very pleased, Mr. President, to present to you two members of the faculty who have been selected to receive the two highest honors bestowed upon faculty members here at Morgan State University. the Dr. Iva G. Jones Medallion Mantle, and the Dr. Sandy Jean McIntyre II International Award. First, the Dr. Iva G. Jones Medallion Mantle is bestowed upon a faculty member who reflects vividly in his or her professional life the qualities distinguishing him or her in teaching, research or scholarship, service, leadership, and character. This year's award is presented to This year's award is presented to we need a drum roll. We need a drum roll. Halavalu Valahaki, Associate Dean, the School of Social Work. Second, the Dr. Sandy Jean McIntyre II International Award is bestowed on a Morgan faculty member who demonstrates extraordinary commitment to global learning and international understanding, and who promotes international programs at Morgan. You ready? This year's award is presented to Dr. James Lee III, Professor of Music. Let us have a round of applause for both of our faculty members. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being a part of this morning as we officially kick off our 2017-18 academic year. Yes, it's exciting. We invite you to continue to consult the Morgan State University website for future announcements of activities, of how you can become involved in Morgan's sesquicentennial celebration. We would also like to bring your attention to the upcoming United Sesquicentennial celebration of 9 HBCUs that are celebrating their 150th anniversary this year. 9. We will join together for a joint celebration here at Morgan's campus from September 28 through 30, 2017. You may find an outline of that celebration on the program insert that you have before you. This celebration will begin with the HBCU 9 choir concert on the evening of September 28th. I know you do not want to miss that special occasion. I know. And where's Dr. Banks? I think we have a game this weekend. Yes, we have a game this weekend, so we hope to see everyone there. Our first year class, go Bears. Go Bears. Go Bears. We want to see you at the game. We now ask that you please rise for the singing of the alma mater and for the benediction that will follow. For those of you who are new at the university, the words of the alma mater can be found on the program booklet insert. Please remain standing at your seats until the academic recessional has left the concert hall. Thank you all so much for being here this morning.
Let God's purpose grow in you May God's progress show through you. May God's promise forever guide you. And then you will have a peace, P-I-E-C-E, of the peace, P-E-A-C-E, of the Prince of Peace. Go now in grace.